Morning, I am calling to order the March 11th Audit Committee meeting. We have a full quorum here, and I'd like to start with an invocation, if you'll bow your heads with me. Dear Lord, thank you for the beautiful sunshine this morning. Thank you for the springtime that is upon us and all the things that it means for us personally and as a community. Be with us as we go through these agendas this morning and help us to make these decisions. Not all of them are easy. Some are very complicated and take a lot of effort and thought. And please help us to make these decisions in wisdom and in truth. In your name we pray. Amen.
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 Let's pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have an approval of the minutes of the previous meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. And do we have any changes to the agenda of the Audit Committee meeting?
Ready for your approval, Madam Chair.
Very good. Let's move directly into it. SME, Mr. Snyder, how are you this morning? Good.
Everyone,
Morning.
Yes.
Good morning.
I have 3 reports to present to you today. And we can just jump right into the coroner's office. We have completed our internal audit of the coroner's office, and we had no exceptions noted in our audit. We did our standard purchase card transactions, purchase requisitions, but also we looked at what's called the job logs, which is how they track their work. Their payroll is a little bit different than the standard county payroll. And they also require certifications. And we analyzed all of that. We looked at those certifications and found no issues there. So coroner's office went well. Any questions about coroner's office?
Do you have any concerns with our change in leadership and personnel over there?
No, that's a little bit outside of my area, but no, we just,
But everybody's performing as
yes,
expected.
yes.
Questions
No
on
issues
that?
with the coroner's office.
Sure. And then let's move to the next one. Thank you.
Okay, so our next report this morning is the magistrate court. We recently wrapped up our internal audit of the magistrate court. Once again, we covered our normal areas of purchase requisitions, purchase cards, and timesheets. Had no issues there. When looking at bank reconciliations, we did notice some differences between the QuickBooks called the register balance, the general ledger balance, and the reconciled accounts. We also noticed some differences between the escrow reports, which come from an external system, and the amounts in the QuickBooks. So when we do these internal audits of the elected officials who have these QuickBooks files, sometimes we notice discrepancies. This is not unlike those that we've noticed before. We also did notice a negative balance in the accounts payable account, and since that time, the magistrate court has corrected that error. So we made some recommendations just in regards to internal controls around bank reconciliations and reconciling the external escrow reports back to the general ledger system, and management has made responses to those recommendations. Any questions about the magistrate court?
Would you consider those amounts to be material, the discrepancy amounts?
Definitely not material to the county. And I always very careful to make clear that this is not an instance of like missing money. It's really just a matter of accounting discrepancies. So I would say, considering the amounts that we're looking at, not terribly material differences, just an area for improved controls to reconcile together these items. And perhaps QuickBooks is maybe not the best system for this application.
Ms. Reese, could they be on Munis? Is that an option?
Yes, I'm sure that they could. Now, they do use Munis for paying invoices, through the county, but as far as these trust funds that they're responsible for, they don't currently use it, but I'm sure that we could set them up to use it.
Thank you.
Are you comfortable that their practices on reconciliation are fine, that they are regularly reconciling their accounts?
Yes, yes. So there is a monthly process for reconciling the bank accounts, and mathematically, the bank reconciliations are correct. We did see some some older checks, which is something we always look for, is checks that have been outstanding for a long time. And we do recommend, in the report, we recommend resolving that. There's a process for that, called unclaimed property. But yes, the bank statements are being reconciled, and we also looked at cash receipts. To be fair, we looked at cash receipts, cash disbursements, and had no issues in those transactions. So at a little bit of a higher level, that we just couldn't tie together the different the different reports.
Any other questions on this one? Good, thank you. And water utility?
So the water utility is a thicker report, and because there's so much going on at the water utility, and we have some charts and graphs in there. We looked at all the different functions of the water utility. It's really a division, and so it's one of the instances when it makes more sense for us to look at the whole division, because each individual department would be kind of small, but altogether it's a big operation. So it took us some hours to get through this, but it really had very few issues. So we looked at our timesheets without any problems, looked at purchase requisitions without any problems. There was one purchase card transaction, which we described, where it seemed that the person that made the purchase approved the purchase. Management's response to that is on page 7. That's been resolved. We looked at cash collections. We analyzed water and sewer revenues. We looked at late and reinstatement account fees. So if someone's water is cut off and they have to turn it back on, there's a fee for that. We traced those fees to being received. We looked at new residential customer revenues, fire hydrant rental revenues. We looked at tap fees. We also looked at the compliance components, licensing, environmental reporting. We didn't have any issues there. We looked at the water efficiency and water loss audits that are performed. We obtained the most recent reports on that and documented it. We looked at inventory, which you can see on page 17. And we did a spot check of inventory. And I've done some thinking on this since we did it, because the inventory report that we had, we couldn't trace to the various components that were in inventory. But it was really, our inventory procedures were not performed at a year end when those things would be reconciled anyway. We sort of dropped in on them, and so it's tough to keep a perpetual inventory of all the components. But if you look at page 17 and look at the management response, there are some efforts to tighten up inventory, and I think that's great. So I didn't make a specific recommendation of how the water utility should keep their inventory, because I'm not an expert, but I think that they should continue to emphasize proper tracking of inventory, and in fact, management is considering updates in CityWorks to try and improve that efficiency. So that's the water utility. Overall, a really good result. Questions about water utility?
Considering how vast that department is and how many transactions are performed in a given month, that you could only find one exception, that's amazing. Mr. Gordon, good job.
Yeah. There's actually one graph in the report where you can see the increase in the number of inspections that have to be done over time. And it's the amount of work they're doing is actually increasing as the county grows because of the increased need for inspections, additional residential and commercial locations. So, yeah, it's a lot of activity.
Do you think we should continue to keep this as one audit for the entire
that's
department,
interesting.
or should we bust it up and do a deeper dive into maybe 2 separate sections?
Well, I suppose we could divide between water and sewer or something like that, but administratively, it's really kind of intertwined. And so I think it continues to be efficient for us, but I'm always open to any feedback. If we want for us to approach it a different way, that would be fine. For us, it's working like this. So,
Questions? Very good. Thank you. Thank you for your report. What do we have coming up?
oh, a couple of things are coming around on the 3-year rotation. We're looking at animal services and possibly 311. Looked at that before. So we have, I'll be working on scheduling actually shortly for the next quarter. So. Questions for us?
I don't have any for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
March internal audit update. What is that?
I think in
one?
the packet.
That was the last part.
Oh, that was it?
That's it.
Oh, okay. Do we have any commissioner or public comment participation? Committee? Thank you. Seeing none, we will adjourn and return in 3 minutes for the Management and Internal Services Committee. Thank you. Good morning. We are reconvening for the Management and Internal Services Committee meeting for March 11th. We have already prayed and pledged. We have a 3-man quorum here today. May I have approval of the minutes of the previous meeting, gentlemen?
Move to accept.
Second.
Thank you. And we have one addition to the agenda.
Yes, Madam Chair, for your consideration, I'm requesting that we add item ITA, which is a resolution to discuss additional homestead exemptions for Columbia County citizens.
Thank you. Added. I have no presentations or consent agenda items. We'll move directly into debate. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, the first item we have your consideration, this is a request from the district attorney. Know that we have his chief investigator here. Investigator Prince is here. We don't, if we have questions, we can do that. And I believe the district attorney may be on the phone. Was he on the phone? He's available if we need him. So y'all realize that Mr. Christine is out serving our country in another capacity, but he's also very engaged in what's going on here. So I did say that I would handle this for him. This is a request for some evidence management software with Axon Enterprise. When we took over the judicial circuit here, they needed some storage for their evidentiary files. We started using that, a solution that we had. Within 4 months, it was completely full. So they got with Mr. Blanchard to talk about what they needed to look at, and we looked at some ideas about long-term storage and a long-term solution. So this is the best one that we could come up with, this Axon Justice Premier Digital Evidence Management System. The total cost for this is $30,084.77, and there's a installation for year one. There is an annual increase of 4% in this software, but this is the software that actually serves his needs. So staff would recommend the purchase of Axon Enterprise Evidence Management Software for the DA's office.
And this purchase is the 30,000 every year, or this is to purchase it?
30,000 every year, and then there is an annual increase on top of that.
Is it web-based?
It's cloud-based.
Cloud-based, that's what I'm saying.
It is just storage, it is not an actual, I mean, it's a program, but it's a storage program. It's not changing the way that they will operate necessarily.
Go ahead, Michael.
No, it is a storage device. It's different from what they're currently doing because we have really more of an ad hoc solution in our
Yeah.
Microsoft Teams environment. This is built specifically for serving their needs to do case management, sharing of information among themselves and other agencies.
Is it customary for the judicial departments to keep storage separate from regular county?
That's usually the safe play because there are CJIS or Criminal Justice Information System issues. They have different certifications they have to have in order to look at that information. So if we can keep it separate, then it's a good idea to do it that way.
Agree.
You can't have the prosecutors and the defendants sharing data files, or the judges for that matter.
Well, if this is the case, will the public defender's office be asking for equivalent?
I'm not sure. I mean, this is just this request. I'm not sure that they may have a state system already in place that they're using, so we've not had any discussions about that.
Questions?
Move to consent.
Second.
Thank you. So moved. Next.
Next item we have is an appointment to the Board of Tax Assessors. This is due to a resignation. This is Vice Chair Malier's appointment, and she's requesting to appoint John Trey Kennedy to the Board of Tax Assessors. So staff recommends the appointment of Trey Kennedy to fill the remaining term of Alex Griffin, which expires December 31st, 2026.
Move to consent.
Second.
So moved. Thank you. And Colonel Kennedy, what do you have for us today?
Granado.
Morning, Sean.
Have Mr. Granado.
Mr. Griffin.
Good morning, everyone. This is the annual fiscal year 2024, which obviously is almost over, but the Emergency Management Performance Grant application. As we've discussed this before, we have a certain amount of things. We have to keep our plans and policies, and we have to do 3 exercises a year. All of that puts together with this so we can get $37,216 in federal funding, and we use that for the staff match. So staff recommends approval.
I don't have any questions. Move to consent.
Second.
So moved.
Thank
But
you.
I do have a question, another question.
Shoot.
Here. So we spent $60 million picking up trees.
Well, we've allocated $60 million. We're going to spend more than that.
I understand that.
We're at like
We got a
48.
$17 million advance
Yeah,
and haven't seen a dime since.
no, you haven't.
What is our path forward?
This is a perfect example. This is 9 months into a fiscal year of getting this document from FEMA. So if we can put that into that perspective, I would say that we have anywhere between 3 and 12 months to wait on any further funding. We've put in for more funding. We've actually put in not only for the $17 million, but that whole package for Category A. We have a team of people over in our office right now working on Category B, and then inspections going out for the permanent work done, Category C through G. John's people are out there constantly getting information and working with those folks to do the inspections. So it is a process. And I'm not going to sugarcoat anything and tell you it's going to be in the next 2 weeks or 2 months. It is what it is. It's how they move. And I hope that they have some urgency. They're working closely with us, but we just lost our PDMG 2 weeks ago, and they're still in the process of us replacing another one. So a year. I hope it's sooner, but I can't guarantee anything.
What does PDMG stand for?
Thank you.
They're the person that helps, they're our facilitator. They're, I don't know exactly.
Liaison.
But you-
Program,
really,
program
serve as-
documentation
Serve
management.
as your liaison
Okay.
with FEMA.
Yes.
And they're from FEMA. And the one we had was doing an excellent job, but unfortunately, he'd been there less than a year. So he got the axe.
Furloughed, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I would say the rest of the staff, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, the rest of the staff seems to be working harder with this now than they have in the past.
It's getting better.
Your last submission was for how much, though? The last
37.
7 million?
And
So-
that encapsulates the 17 that's already
Right.
been advanced.
Right, so
So
how much have we submitted? that has not-
37 for that.
Right.
We're working on B, which is going to be 6. So we've only got the first 120 days. We haven't done, I have a spreadsheet that I can give you that has all that specific information.
Right, but you said 37 million, that includes the 17.
That's correct.
So we're waiting on 20 back from that.
That's correct.
But that'll clear us to the 17 too, because it was.
Right.
Long.
Right. And then that's for the 120 days. Then we have another package for 60 days at 75%. Could be 85, but it depends on how much the state of Georgia hits. If the state of Georgia hits $1.9 billion, then it'll come back at a 90-10. But either way, Governor Kemp said that he'd make up the difference regardless.
Full 25.
Are you having to submit to both Fed and state now for that portion?
We do anyways. It's always state and
So it
federal.
is.
Yes.
But
And
the
then we
money
have-
actually comes through the state
Yes.
when you reimburse from FEMA.
But
So they're in the loop.
FEMA to us.
That's correct.
And it depends on the day which one's more difficult. Which one has their magnifying glass out. It just depends. So we have to send all of the information. So it's getting there. We're doing everything that we can. And the ball is actually in their court with the 37 million. So we're literally just waiting.
But we need to follow up with, who was that gentleman that visited us in October?
Donald Trump.
Yeah,
President,
Oh, well.
we need to follow up with him.
I don't have that kind of pool.
Whatever you need, okay. How
Mr.
about
Johnson, did you
reimbursement?
get his phone number while he was
We
here?
needed our PDMG, but he took that away.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sean.
Yes, sir.
And thank you for that report. Now, we have some vehicle purchases.
Wait till Doug leaves?
You gonna wait a year and 9 months?
No, I just meant,
Internal services.
We have for you a list of vehicles that were damaged during Hurricane Helene. These were deemed totaled from various departments. We have worked with our Sourcewell contract holder to have these replaced, so we are recommending that we purchase these vehicles from Allen J.
These are all replacement.
Yes, these are
for
all
vehicles
totaled
that were
during the
totaled during the storm.
storm.
Wow.
Come up here and tell us.
Are 2332, 2327, 2432, 2456, and 2392.
Still
were-
totaled? In
They're
another
totaled.
way, they weren't totaled from the storm, but they were still
Or
totaled vehicles.
pre-Helene, yes.
Right, but all these are replacement vehicles, not new.
Yes, they are
Yes.
all
That's a
replacements.
lot.
And it'll be, insurance will
Yes.
cover these.
Insurance does not.
Well,
cover- Yeah,
we
sorry.
we don't insure vehicles because we have $100,000 stop loss, and these are always under $100,000. We only insure like heavy equipment,
Okay.
anything
That are
over
Helene will
100,000.
go through FEMA.
So we do have to pay for them.
But the
County
Helene
pays.
ones,
They'll go through
We'll go
FEMA.
through FEMA.
The Helene ones will go
joy.
through
so
FEMA,
we'll,
maybe.
years from now, get,
so this is an $816,000 outlay. That was, I assume we were planning, that was allotted?
No,
Not the
we
FEMA.
never plan for totaled vehicles.
We didn't plan for the hurricane.
Yeah.
No,
We
but-
just don't usually
wait a
have
minute.
this many,
Right. No, I mean, we plan on,
year.
but, yeah,
yeah,
but just not quite so many.
quite not, no.
Move to consent.
thank you. So moved.
Second,
So moved. All right, moving on to technology services. Blanchard?
Yes, ma'am. I've got 5 items for your consideration today. The first one is a Cisco equipment lifecycle purchase from Dysis. You've heard me talk about life cycles before. Essentially, that's when we're replacing old equipment that's it's been given an end of life or end of service, end of support from our vendor. We're replacing that with new equipment. That's what we have on the first item here. We're replacing all the Cisco equipment at one of our community facilities. Excuse me. The cost of this equipment is $264.94. That'll be funded through SPLOST, and staff recommends approval.
How old is the equipment? I know you said there's no more warranty, but hypothetically, if you get a laptop and it lasts, one I'm running now, 6-7 years.
It varies, and I hate to give you an answer that sounds evasive there, but we put in an access point. That access point may last us for 6, 7, 8 years. There may be another one that we put in that only lasts for 4. The department may call and say, hey, we want to have this, we need an access point, or we need to add 3 users in this area, so we have to go get a new switch. Essentially what we're doing is taking the obsolete equipment will be taken out and then replaced with all the new.
Pleasure?
The targeted life cycle is end of service. Oftentimes we'll go to end of life though. Because end of service is when the vendor quits providing any kind of updates. So you're kind of on a limb there, but we'll push it to the end of life where they don't even make it anymore. At that point, the equipment has to be.
The end of life totally makes sense.
But you have to be careful because of the item that it is. If it's a core switch, you don't want to wait till end of life because you may end up having a 5-week outage. And given that what it does, you can't, that's unacceptable. So
Right.
you start planning for it at the end of service. You may get another 2 or 3 years out of it. And the equipment that we're talking about here, you're talking Cisco equipment. So you're not really
Core
talking
switches,
end user equipment. You're talking core network and network infrastructure. So the plan is always go to end of service at least. But when you get to end of life, taking too much of a risk there. So, and that can be, you'll see later on, there were 3 call managers that we chose not to buy because we ended up going to WebEx. You remember approving that? Well, those 3 call managers were they were end of service, nearing end of life. So that's why we made the move to go to WebXN, because that saved us another $150,000 for 3 of them. So that's what we did. So it depends on what it is, but it can be 10, 15 years, right, Sean? It depends on really on the equipment. That old one that's sitting in my office that I use as an end table, that was, I think, it finally died at 15 years. And that was an example of what we don't want to do, because that died one morning and it was in use. And we were out, 5 hours or something, because we had already bought the other one and it was ready to go. Had we not, it could have been a 5-week outage. So, some insight.
And I guess one additional point there is that at some point, they don't do security updates for this equipment anymore.
Right.
And obviously, we've got as a county, as a government, we have unfortunately a high profile there. And the more we can protect ourselves, keep that newer equipment in the field, push updates to it, then we're more secure.
I think it's called planned obsolescence. They come buy new equipment.
Right.
Move to consent.
Second, which SPLOST is this?
23 to 28, I believe. It's, okay, 1722, we're cleaning that one up. Thank you.
All right, spend the old money.
So moved. Thank you. Next.
Next item I have for your consideration is the Cisco equipment purchase for Building A. This one, of course, is for the new building, so everything going in here is brand new, essentially being built from the ground up, literally. We worked with Dysis, which is our Cisco provider. The cost of the equipment for the new Building A is $874,898.77. Staff recommends approval.
Consent.
Second.
So moved. Next.
Right. This item is almost identical to the first one. We're doing a life cycle replacement at a county campus, working with DISIS on that in order to replace their access, access points and network switches. The cost of this equipment is $231,579.17, and staff recommends approval.
Gentlemen,
Move to consent.
Second.
so moved. And next?
Next item is IT production environment infrastructure refresh. We worked with Mainline, that is our, I guess I call them our big iron contractor. They deal with our essential air server environments and mass storage. The equipment that we have in place right now will be end of support at the end of this year, and we need to go ahead and be proactive in order to replace it. So staff has gathered quotes for $232,741.64, which will be funded through TA funds. Staff recommends approval.
So help me, what is a life cycle refreshment? What? I'm just trying to understand what.
Okay, most of the software that staff uses comes from a server. We've got the main program is installed on the server, and then people at the endpoints use that. This is for the environment on which those servers live and where the data resides. So this is a virtual environment. You've got two schools of thought. You could buy individual servers for every application, which is incredibly inefficient, or we can have this virtual environment where basically we can carve out all the servers that we need. It's much more efficient because we have a pool of resources that we can use. Good thing about that is that we only replace that every few years instead of replacing a lot of smaller servers on an interim basis. I would be coming back here a lot more asking for additional money for servers for different applications if we didn't have this environment set up. So really, any file that you store on our network, if it's on a network drive, it's on this device. If we look at any of our GIS imagery, it's on this device. It's really the heart and soul.
But what Michael is saying is absolutely right. Doing it this way is a lot more efficient and cost savings, because if you did it per software or per application rather, it would be untenable. It would cost too much. So through using a virtual environment or VLANs, you're able to keep it separate, not interconnected in any way, but it does reside on the same device. It just sees itself as being separate. But it's the right way to do it.
Move to consent.
Second.
So moved. Do you have one more for us?
I do. And last but not least is our WebEx telephony payment authorization. This is one I'm actually excited to bring to you because it's even though it's $140,410.20, I did want to highlight that this is a savings of $307,350 from what we did a few years ago. So it's a rare change in the other direction, where what we're doing now is significant savings over what we use. This is for our WebEx calling. And staff recommends approval.
I want to add to that too. That's a savings of $307,000, but it's also a one-time savings of $150,000 that I mentioned earlier. Those pieces of equipment won't need to be replaced. The other advantage that we have in this is operationally, this gets rid of your PRIs, right? Your AT&T PRIs, so your primary rate interfaces, which gave us our calling ability. It's very likely that had we been relying upon that in September during the hurricane, we would have not had that capability. But because we had so much access to the internet, the WebEx calling, which is based in the cloud, allowed us to do that and operate as usual. So operationally and fiscally, this was a really smart move.
Will there be new equipment to purchase, new desk phones or anything?
Now it uses what we have.
Those would be covered under our other life cycle programs. So there's no new equipment at all.
It's the equipment that's already on your desk.
This change began in November 22. It has been in place for almost 2 years, and this is just an annual.
Right. We've been working through, it's been a long
Correction.
process. We've been working through that, but we've realized the full savings from it right now.
Gotcha. Move to consent.
Second.
So moved. Anything else, Mr. Blanchard?
No, ma'am, that's quite enough.
That is quite enough. Thank you.
We're spending
Thank
some
you.
money today.
Yes, yes, we are. The chairman's about to have a heart attack over here. We have one more item, the item that we added. Mr. Johnson, would you like to talk about that?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll get started, and I know this is your project, so we'll definitely chime in as you need to. So, as you all know, the Board of Commissioners tasked Chair to look at additional tax relief as the chairman of the MIS committee. You did that at your last meeting when we voted to opt out of House Bill 581. As a result of that, she has been working with me. We have been working with our local delegation, and we have a resolution in front of you today to ask for permission to move forward with this homestead relief for our taxpayers. So as we've discussed a lot during the House Bill 581 discussions, the tax bill is actually made up of really two multipliers. You have the assessed value of the home, and it's adjusted, and I'll come back to that in just a second. And then you have the millage rate, which this board, we've talked about this tremendous amount, has been very diligent in lowering that millage rate. And again, we stand as one of the lowest millage rates in the entire state. So when it comes to the amount of taxes you're levying, we are already lowering a lower millage rate than most others in the state, if not all. We're very close to being at the bottom, certainly for the amount of services that we provide. But the board decided that you wanted to look at the other multiplier, which was the assessed value of the home. As values continue to rise, you wanted to do something to help cap that. 581 did not seem to be a suitable solution for us, so we said, let's take a look at the actual homestead exemption itself. As you know, the state provides a $2,000 homestead exemption currently. That has been in place since, I believe, 1967, so it's been $2,000 for a long, long time. But we looked at the possibility of adding that, much like Governor Kemp did 2 years ago when he provided a grant that gave us an additional $20,000 homestead exemption. That was a one-time deal. The difference in the grant, what we're talking about was, what the grant was essentially the state paying the taxes on behalf of the taxpayer. They had a surplus in the state budget, so they actually paid Columbia County's property taxes for the homeowner. This is different. This is providing true homestead tax relief. So back to that multiplier, you get your assessed value. We tax at a 40% rate. So let's say your house is worth $100,000. We tax you at 40% of that. So your taxes would be $40,000 minus any exemptions. You get the $2,000 exemption, so that would take you down to $38,000 times the millage rate. But what we're asking to do is we're asking to give our taxpayers a total of a $10,000 homestead exemption. This would be inclusive of what the state gives. So currently the state gives 2, the county would be given an additional 8 for a total of 10. So now that $40,000 tax bill would come down to $30,000, obviously multiplied by our already low millage rate, provides additional tax relief. So you guys are actually lowering taxes on both sides of the equation by providing this. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out, you know, the state was trying to provide tax relief in House Bill 581 by capping the assessments at a CPI or an artificial rate, whatever that case may be. What this does is this takes what the state is already doing and really multiplies it. It's 4 times the tax relief that the state's been giving us. So the county's given the taxpayer 4 times what they're already getting, you know, for a total of a $10,000 homestead exemption. So we felt like this was a good way to go. This does not apply to the school board. They're their own taxing authority. I do understand that they're going to be taking this matter up as well. I've discussed our methodology with the superintendent, and I know that the chairman and some of you have been working with other members of the school board. So they're looking at doing something very similar. And then both cities are also looking at doing something, because this will not apply to the cities. So Commissioner Couch has a quarterly meeting with the cities today, so I'm sure this will be a topic of conversation. We're glad to help them in any way, but I believe the task to Commissioner Malier, to the vice chair, was to come up with some kind of tax relief, and this is what we've come up with so far. So this resolution is simply asking our state delegation to move forward with this bill. It has to be dropped in the State House. If the bill is passed and signed by the governor, which we have no reason to believe it wouldn't, it would go to the voters in November of this year. It would be effective January 1st of 2026 and would apply to next year's tax bill. So there is a process that we have to go through. We can't just automatically do this at the local level, but this is the method that we have chosen to provide additional tax relief. And I'll yield to the chair here to talk about whatever else you may have.
After being tasked with this, a lot of folks on the team got to work and made it work. We've been in contact with our legislative delegation, our local delegation in Atlanta, worked with them and with legal counsel under the Gold Dome, making sure that we could do this, making sure everything was legitimate and that it should flow through the process easily. Having run through a couple of scenarios, different home values and what it means for the taxpayers, I think this is a very beneficial thing for our homestead exempted properties. And I look forward to hopefully sending it through the process. But first, we have to get it through this committee and onto our agenda next Tuesday, correct?
Yes, I will say that if it's the pleasure of the committee, since we do have a quorum of the commission here, what I would ask that we be able to do is if this resolution is passed, we can certainly have input from the other two commissioners that are here. If this resolution is passed, we want to move forward with this. There are only 40 days in the legislative session. We are getting close to the end. We've already passed crossover. Local legislation is not affected by crossover, so we can still get this done. To even make this possible, we had to run the ad. I had to place the ad in the paper last week, and I believe it ran today. Did it actually run? Did we see the ad? We haven't checked. We have done everything that we needed to do to make sure that the ad is run, so we are covered because we do have some protections there. So we have run the legal ad. It will run today. That will give Representative Richardson, who is the author of the bill, and the rest of our local delegation, we have to wait 7 days. The ad has to run 7 days, which means they could drop the bill next Tuesday or next Wednesday. Every day counts. So what I'm asking is that if this committee approves this resolution, you give me the authority to transmit that to our delegation so they can start working on the legislation, so the bill can be ready to be dropped. You will then vote on this next Tuesday night. But again, all this is doing is asking them to prepare and drop the bill. This is not the actual bill itself. Things could change. As a matter of fact, the local delegation could actually change local legislation. They could do something completely different. We just want to put in writing what the request is from this board, and I would like the ability to be able to transmit this, if approved by the committee today, to go ahead and get the ball rolling, because we literally have a window of about 3 or 4 days, that if we miss those 3 or 4 days, we will miss this session, which means we would have to do this next year. It would apply to 27. I don't think that's the intent of the body.
Hopefully, if we have a unanimous consent from this committee, that our local delegation would not change it, would not deny it or do anything crazy with it. So time is of the essence. Gentlemen, do you have any comments? Commissioner Couch, Commissioner Caraway, do you have any comments?
Move to consent.
Does it have to be consent? Does it need to be?
No,
consent?
you can actually move it to consent. That would be the request here, and if we have a unanimous decision to move to consent, then we will move forward as we discussed. If anything happens, we'll bring that to the board's attention next Tuesday.
So it doesn't require any
No.
public comment next Tuesday?
No.
All?
Second.
And the ad, I just confirmed that the ad is in the paper today.
Very good, very good. We have a motion and a second. It is so moved, and it will be on the consent agenda next Tuesday. And I look forward to seeing this through. Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for your hard work on this. I know how many hours you put in on it, and it's much appreciated. All right, moving on in our agenda. I believe that was the last item on this committee. Is there any public comment?
Staff reports.
Oh, yeah, we got staff report. Sorry about that. I was in a hurry. I apologize. Personnel savings.
Real quick, you just see that the total amount of personnel savings so far year to date is a little over $1.2 million. We have the turnover there for you as well. One thing that I do want to point out is our applications in January and February. If you scroll down and look at that, you can see that we've gotten really more than twice as many applications in January, and almost the same trend in February. So people are looking to Columbia County as a place to come to work. I think our market adjustment to our salary matrix last year has a big impact on that. The culture that we have here, people want to come to work for Columbia County. So that gives us the opportunity to kind of choose the best talent and keep our staff size low. But overall, I'll answer any questions you have.
No questions?
Year-to-date budget report.
Yes, the first item I have for you is the year-to-date budget report. This is for the month ended February 28th. We should be performing around 66% of the budget, and all is well at this time.
And SPOST.
The next report is the sales tax report for the month of January. We received just over $3 million, and our annualized percentage increase is now 7.65%. We are down almost 20% from last month, of course, last month being the Christmas month, and that's to be expected, but we are up almost 10% from the same month last year.
And the investments.
Final report for your information is the investment report, and this is for the month of January.
Gentlemen. All right. Do we have any other commissioner comment, public input? None. I have no items for executive session. We will adjourn and return in 3 minutes for the Development and Planning Services Committee. Thank you.
Development and Planning Services Committee for March 11th, 2025. Having dispensed with the invocation, pledge of allegiance, and having an existing quorum, we will move straight through approval of the minutes of previous meeting and the approval of the agenda. Any changes? Being none,
Chairman.
we'll go all the way down to the debate agenda, new business, and the deputy manager, Mr. Slaughter.
We'll bring Mr. Prather.
Good morning.
Morning.
How y'all
Morning,
doing?
sir.
I have 3 items for your consideration this morning. The first is awarding a bid for the Sheriff's Detention Dorm project to Artie Brown. This is obviously a exact replica, just about, of his existing F-Pod up there. 46 bunks, an additional 92 people in this dorm, depending on how you arrange the beds. We had a committee. Sheriff's staff was involved in selection of R.D. Brown and the base bid of $4,235,000. Staff recommends approval.
Move to consent.
What's the ETA on this?
Another month or so before we get contracts signed and bonds, so we'll break ground hopefully by middle of May.
Yeah, but done in a year?
Oh, yes, yes, sir.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
I'm sorry. Less than, I think it's 330 days of construction.
No, if I could find something wrong with it, I would.
Second. Unless somebody, you already moved to consent?
Or I made a motion.
Yes,
Second.
so it is moved to consent. Thank you, sir. Next item.
The next item is a contract for special inspections and material testing for the Sheriff's Detention Dorm Phase 2 project. This is an estimate for around $37,000. It allows us to meet the requirements of special inspections and material testing. Staff recommends the approval of the contractor agreement with WSP USA, Inc.
Why is this not part of the contractor's scope?
Very good question. So in our best interest as an owner and liability, as an owner and for liability issues, we contract with those services. If the GC was to have that capability, they could potentially manipulate the test.
Move to consent.
Second.
Third item for your consideration is an underground power easement with Georgia Power for the coroner's office. This is part of the renovation and addition project there. We are simply moving a transformer and having a new transformer in place for the upgrades at his facility. Staff recommends approval of the easement.
Cost for this?
No, ma'am.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Development Services.
All right, the only one I have for your consideration is I call beverage license for Noria Energy Retail, Inc., doing business at Noria 221 Bobby Jones Expressway. They have applied for the sale of alcohol license to sell beer and wine for off-premise consumption from 221 Bobby Jones. They have provided all the information required, and the property has been posted on February 21st. Staff recommends approval of license April 1st, 2025 Board of Commissions.
Consent.
Second.
So moved. Planning Services, sir. Let's talk about ancillary. Is that, how do you say it? Ancillary dwelling?
Ancillary dwellings, yes, sir. So the first item up is an ancillary dwelling request to exceed the allowed 1,800 square feet. The property is 7205 Bill Dorn Road. The applicant has applied for building permits for both the main house of 4,574 square feet and an ancillary dwelling of 3,710. However, of that 3,700, only 839 square feet would be conditioned as living space. So while our ordinance requires it anything over 1,800 square feet, it does not discern between the conditioned and the unconditioned space. So that's why the request is before you. Staff's reviewed it. It is on 6.95 acres of property. So staff feels comfortable recommending approval.
Move to consent.
Second.
Is this what they call a barn dominium?
This is a big storage building with a little bit of, mother-in-law suite or, live-in space.
All right, sir. So moved. Next.
All right, next 2 items are easement encroachment agreements. The first one is for 714 Marsh Point. There are actually 2 easement encroachments, both for 5-foot-high retaining walls. The first one is inside a 5-foot drainage and utility easement on the side lot line. The second one is inside a 20-foot sanitary sewer easement. Both have been reviewed by staff and believed to be acceptable, so we are recommending approval.
Have they already been built and asking for permission after the fact, or are they asking in appropriate order.
Believe they're asking in appropriate order. I confirm that yet. Believe you're correct. I believe you are correct.
To consent?
Second.
Are we moving on both of those?
No, the second item.
Second one is another 20-foot
Yeah,
drainage.
it
Okay.
is. It's a separate one. It's a 6-foot-high retaining wall along the rear property line. It's within the 20-foot drainage and utility easement. As you see in the backup, it is outside of the swimming pool, which is not within the easement, but the retaining wall is obviously within that easement. So Water Utilities has reviewed this and believes it's acceptable, so staff is recommending approval.
Move to consent.
Second.
So moved. Thank you very much. That concludes new business. No legal matters and staff reports, planning services.
All right, for your information only is the February 25 Planning Department Workload Monthly Report. Answer any questions you might have.
Any questions?
No, sir.
All righty. And
Also for your information is the January 25 Plan Review Workload Monthly Report, and I'll answer any questions you might have about that.
questions?
No, sir.
We're down about half total plan reviews from last year? Is that what I'm seeing? 22 for January of this year, 42 for January last year?
That would be correct.
All right, just double checking.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. Development Services reports.
All right, the first report we have is Development Services Monthly Report. Copy of that is in the package for information only. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Paul, just a
Point out-
reminder, is it so the housing residential permits, those from June to now, or is it?
That's July 1 until now.
July 1 is what I meant,
That's
yeah.
correct. And they're up about 30% on the residential side and about 45 on the commercial side. Would like to point out, but due to the information I emailed you all received, code enforcement has been removing signs, and you can see down there, we've already picked up close to 3,300 more than we did last year. It's almost like trying to, empty the ocean with a teaspoon, so, but they're doing a great job trying to keep ahead of that as much as possible.
Thank you.
All right, the next report I have is the financial report, and a copy of that report's there for your information, and happy to answer any questions if you have.
Questions?
No, sir.
All right, the last one I have is the temporary alcohol permits. Copy of that report's for your review.
Taken for information. Thank you, sir. Any public comments, any commissioner comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I can get you, if we can go back and get you to call for an approval of the minutes for the last meeting, we skipped over that.
Oh, sorry. May I have approval of the February 11th meeting?
February 11th.
Second.
So moved. Sorry about that, sir.
No worries.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
the reminder. All right, then, seeing no other business, we have no executive session. Now that we've cleared the minutes for last meeting, we are adjourned.